for the couple minutes for the group here, I thought there's so many things that we could look at for a minute, but one of them is we've already told people that are listening that finding at the beginning of this 5-year remaining preparation period, the importance of finding the best location that's practical for each person is important. But compared to that, or along with that, how important is when you get to that place and start developing whatever situation you've got the means to do, how important is it to follow some of the things that you talked about in the secure home?
The most important thing, and there's always a certain level of priority people have to deal with in securing their property, because there's almost no limit to what you can do in terms of security. So a lot of that depends, first of all, on how urban your new location is. You don't have to be completely rural to be safe. There are many places in the far west that have a small town environment that are relatively safe to have, so that you don't necessarily have to be on a farm, so to speak.
Okay.
But the type of security that you have depends on your surroundings. So the first thing you have to do in choosing a location and getting to that location is get to know your neighbors, get to know the people around you. Check the local newspapers, see, and all the rural towns are going to be conservative. There's no major liberal papers outside of the big cities, okay?
Interesting, yeah.
And so they're all going to be conservatives. Most of them are not savvy conservatives. They're just generally conservative people with good moral values. There is drugs moving into even rural areas now, because that's the way they get away from the police and the drug enforcement agencies, to go rural now. A lot of the best rural places in the East have been ruined now by meth labs and drug traffic. But even in rural areas, the public schools are corrupting all the youth everywhere. So there's going to be a certain level of security that you need, even in rural areas, among conservative people, because of youth robbing houses and drug users, etc.
Yeah.
So everyone is going to need a little minimum type of security system to make sure that they get advance warning. But the primary thing that I want to make people, and when people ask me about the first steps of security, is make sure you get a location where you can do a basement. And preferably you want to pick areas that already build basements, so that doing a basement is not into deep caliche soil, or in California where it's hard pan and nobody builds basements here, so you can't get it done for a cheap price. You want to get into an area like Utah and Idaho that everybody does basements, and so that's not a rarity. And you want to be able to, even if you buy an existing home, and by the way, still buying existing homes is far cheaper than building new everywhere now, because building prices continue to go up.
Okay.
But home prices don't necessarily. Older user homes are still where your relative bargains are.
You have a little bit less trouble with the zoning and stuff too, right?
That's right. The more that you can do in a remodeling scenario rather than building new, the less you avoid building permits. And so if you get a home with an existing basement, there's a great deal you can do about concealing safe rooms within an existing building without having to get a building permit. If you're doing everything from scratch, you have to go through some deception things to make sure that you disguise what you're building for later installation as a secure room. For example, but the core thing is you want to plan, you got to have a safe room of some side, and if you're going to have a safe room, you might as well make it fallout and fire resistant.
All right.
And you might as well make it concealed. If you're going to go to all the trouble to build this, make it concealed and make it fallout resistant so that you've got protection. And if it's concealed and hardened with concrete, etc., it acts as a vault room as well, so that you can conceal weapons, ammunition, food storage, other things in there. You see, there's a tremendous amount of benefit to having a concealed underground room. Not to mention being able to hide people if you have friends, that are being persecuted by government someday. So that's the primary thing that I look for in securing your home, is make sure you've got basement space to work with.
Okay. And it probably wouldn't hurt for people to read the book too, I would imagine.
Oh, of course. The secure home has everything, 700 pages long. It covers everything from solar to generators to shuttering systems to basements to how to do the construction to escape tunnels. And it has a huge appendix about how to find this hard to locate equipment. And
Is that bought from Amazon, or do you sell it on your site? Or
we sell it at joelskousen.com, and you can also get it on amazon.com.
Okay. And the last thing I wanted to ask you related to that is that we know that in the Agenda 21 plans, one of the main elements is getting people completely out of rural areas, probably because they understand everything you're talking about. And do you see that that's going to be something they'll be able to do much with, or is it just an empty threat?
Empty threat. They're never going to get people out of the rural areas. Remember, the war is going to come, and there's going to be no globalist things happening during the war. When it starts to knit together afterwards, that's when you got to watch out for it. But I think there'll always be pockets of resistance to this global government, et cetera. And they have to give lip service to democracy. So they're not going to be able to, by edict, remove people out of rural. That's why they're concentrating on making sure there's no more development except in high-density urban areas. They want to urbanize, but I don't think you're ever going to see people relocated out of their homes except by destruction. If they let war roll through the countryside as they did in Germany, they might be able to do that.
Well, they also, in some areas, are tearing up the access roads through forest land and stuff like that.
That's right. Even in Utah, we've seen that happen, where they prohibit the counties from maintaining roads going into the forest and things. But no, they're not going to be able to remove the farmers. I mean, there are thousands of people in these rural areas. It's not small communities anymore. So I don't think there's any problem with that. And you're still safer for the war. Remember, you got to survive the war coming. If you're going to live to fight another day, you got to survive the war.
Right.
And that means the more rural you are, that you could be better. I think the optimum thing is an hour away from a major city, so that you're far enough away they can't walk to you, yet you can drive and get to a Home Depot or get building materials, etc.
And you're figuring there's going to be some way to be okay, even though there's neighbors around you that aren't in on surviving anything.
Yeah, because good conservative people will turn in the right direction, even though their kids who are public school idiots may not. The good rural people will. You'll be able to depend and band together and help one another.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, I know you've got stuff to do, so thanks for the time, and I think we're all set for next week.
All right. Good to talk to you guys.
Yeah, see you then. Have a good week.
Good night.